I'm like, I'm not going there. What's wrong? Yeah, I'm literally like,
Defend again.
like they're always like, it's too easy. Yeah, oh, for real? Yeah. Dude, Barry, what time is that? Yeah. You play, oh shit.
Now you can lock your hands. All right, going for the arm bar from high close guard. So again, there are many different ways to do this. Okay, the traditional way, you typically grab the wrist, hook the bicep, pull it across. Okay, they'll show you foot on the hip, pivot, cut, push the head away, and bring your leg over. Okay, not bad details there for learning the mechanics of a closed guard armbar. Okay, after a while, that's going to stop working, especially after that white and blue belt. Okay, so let's look at some actual practical ways we could set this up and ensuing attacks once we set it up. Okay, so instead of doing this for now, we're going to use our standard 2-on-1. So cross gripping the wrist, palm up, same side grip on the tricep, palm up. Okay, and now we have a strong dragging ability here. Now to actually get them moving, we need to use our lower body. So with my lower body, my heels are going to go down to bring my lower back off the mat. Okay, I'm using that to knee pull. If he doesn't react, this arm's going to go all the way across typically, and we'll work our other attacks from here. Okay. Now the issue is, and a big reason why we're choosing to go to the arm bar is when I go to knee pull, he resists by pulling back. That pulls me off the ground slightly, which is going to give me a lot of options here. A specific one's the collar tie, which is really conducive for the high close guard here. Okay, so once I get the collar and the elbow, I'm bringing my elbows in, and again, I'm continuing to pull my knees forward so I can break his posture. Okay, from here, I'm climbing my legs. Okay, the leg the opposite of the arm bar, I want to get it as high across his back as possible. Nice high chop. The same side one, preferably I want my hamstring over his shoulder here. Okay, so I have a nice tight pinch. So from here, I can just keep the collar tie, let go of his arm, and he shouldn't be able to posture out of this. Okay, yeah. If your knee isn't this tight, okay, or you're like generally you're just below the shoulder, Ramiro will square up really easy. So that's a very important detail to remember. Okay, so again here, pulling forwards, climbing our legs up and getting a nice pinch. Okay, reasonably the first submission we should look at here, once we drive our heels, pinch our knees, get this tight, is when he doesn't defend. Okay, so right now he's just leaving this arm out in the open. Okay, so all we're going to do from here, pinch the knees, bring the heels down, both hands to the wrist, and we have a normal straight arm lock inside of the high close guard here. So one more time, just do it. 2-on-1, hips engaged, but when I drag his arm, he resists. I come up with him, I get the collar tie, and I knee pull again to break his posture. Climbing the legs up as high as we possibly can to get a nice tight vise on the shoulders and the head. Okay. Again, from here, if he doesn't defend, we have the arm bar right away. All right, let's talk about now when he does start defending. So when he grabs his bicep here, okay, keeps this tight. From this position here, just the high close guard, it's going to be a little bit harder to separate this arm from time to time. Okay, so let's start thinking about switching to the normal close guard arm bar where we bring this leg over so we have considerable power against his head and his posture here. So the first thing I want to do, okay, the hand that's closest to his legs, I want to make a grip on this wrist that's grabbing the bicep, okay? It's not wrong to be under here already, but it's going to be harder to go right to an arm lock once you bring the leg over. So if we go in front, we'll have a better opportunity of going right to the attack. So again, the hand that's closest to the legs, I have a few options here. If he's grabbing really tight or I just generally am having trouble here, okay, all I'm going to do is grab his wrist, okay? So I can hook my thumb in, just grab here, okay? If that's ever tough, or if he's giving me a few more options here, okay, I can also bring my thumb under his thumb and start peeling the wrist and then grab his wrist like this too. Also too, if this hand and wrist happens to be a little bit through like this, we can also slide our wrist and our elbow over like this, okay? Point being, it's not always gonna be the same, but you have a lot of options here, okay? So I'm gonna grab the wrist because that's typically gonna be the most common one. Let's talk about my other hand now. In order to bring this leg over, I need to have the ability to not let him drive his head forwards towards me, okay? Go ahead. If he does that, it's gonna be really hard to throw this leg over and he's probably gonna rip his arm out of this, okay? So what I wanna do to stop him is make a frame here, just like side control. I'm gonna bring my forearm to the side of the neck so that my wrist is aligned with the top of his shoulder and my hand folds over here so I have a really strong frame here. A strong frame that allows me to engage my forearm, my elbow, and my tricep with a pushing motion. So now the harder he drives in, go ahead, the more I can push his head away with this. It's considerably strong. Now it's very important that I bring my leg over his head in a very specific fashion. A big mistake here that I can make is I'll get too excited, I'll make my legs wide, and as I throw it over, yeah, he postures away from me. So a couple details here to keep his posture broken. With this grip, make sure you're still keeping your elbows tight, okay? When we open our legs, this is also gonna help. We're gonna open with pinched knees, not wide knees. So I open with pinched knees and my heels driving down, so that if Ramiro does go to posture up, I have the ability to keep him here longer, and you can see his elbow doesn't slip out quite as much, okay? So as I'm doing this, I'm still driving his head away. Without opening my knee, I'm bringing him around his head, connecting my hamstring to the side of his neck. Now, once we get here, let's talk about our first finish, which could be our fastest option right away. So we're gonna go to crossed ankles. We could have open ankles or crossed ankles, they're both correct. When I go crossed ankles, it's very important I drive my heels down so that my tailbone goes through his tricep. When it goes through his tricep, that means his arm is being pinched to his stomach. So from here, if he goes to rip his arm away, it's way easier to keep this in for longer, okay? So, heels down, hips up. Now, he will still from time to time be able to drive his head forwards. Opening my knees, specifically this top knee, is gonna give me the ability to push his head away, okay? Not only that, you guys will find that when you do the first detail of driving your heels down and making your knees wide, your knees go open anyways. Then from here, he can try to frame all he wants. It should be a little easier to separate his arm because he's being stretched out, okay? So I pull this to the middle of my chest, I bridge, and then I'll finish the arm bar, okay? Let's look at that again a little faster. So here he's resisting, I pull him down, climb my legs up, okay? There's the first arm bar, but he defends, okay? So right away, we hook his wrist however we see fit. I take my outside hand, I frame on his neck here, and I'm using my forearm and elbow to keep his head away from me, okay? I'm gonna open my legs with pinched knees. As I'm bringing my leg around, my legs are always aligning this way, and this knee's not opening. It's like dragging past his face towards my chest, so it goes over easier and safer, okay? From here, we'll go right to crossed ankles, heels down, knees wide, hip driving through the tailbone, and then we can finish by driving our hips and extending the arm. Now let's look at what can happen when we get the leg over, but we still can't extend his arm, okay? It's typically gonna happen a lot with stronger people, okay? People with good positioning. So when I come over here, I go to extend his arm. Reasonably, he can readjust this hand back through and really bury his elbows here, and it's really still hard to pull this through, even if you have grips on the wrist already, okay? So, this time, we're gonna take the head side hand and we're gonna control the wrist, okay? What we're gonna look to do now is get an underhook on his leg. And a lot of times, if he's doing like proper defense where he drives forwards, his base will come up a little bit and we'll be able to underhook the leg, okay? You can go back down for now, okay? Even if he doesn't do that though, you still have details that are gonna give you the ability to expose the underhook on his leg here, okay? So, this can also be a great time, I actually recommend this, for you to uncross your ankles. Reason being, okay, if we uncross our ankles here and we start looking at an open ankle position, we can windshield wipe our feet towards his head. And you can see when I windshield wipe towards his head and drive my heels to the mat, it pushes his head to the mat, and look what comes up, his hips, right off of his heels, right? So, if he's not stacking me, I'm gonna use this motion to reveal what I want, which is the underhook, okay? Once I feel him start to rise up here, I'm gonna dive under, okay? You don't have to give me that. Yeah. He was being nice to me there. That might happen sometimes, people will do that. But just so you know, you don't need to do that, okay? Like this is enough. Think of a pendulum sweep, for example, okay? So I dig under, and when I dig under, again, just like a pendulum sweep, I'm bringing my ear as close to his knee as possible, okay? Now, all we're gonna do here with this anchor on his leg is continue to drive our feet to the floor, okay? And this causes a great off balance here. For now, we're gonna separate some of the details of the topside armbar, possibly leave it for the end of the video here, okay? When you come to the top, make sure you're pulling your heels in, you're generally pinching your knees. And again, we can start doing the same thing just on top now. Using our elbow to separate the wrist, okay? Both hands on his wrist here. There's a tight armbar here, okay? And we'll talk about some other finishes when we get more towards the end here. One more time. So, we're still following the same sequence here. Dragging the arm across, walking the legs up. There's our first armbar, Ramiro defends, okay? From here, we hook the wrist, we frame on the head, pinch knees, bring the leg over, crossed ankle finish, wide knees. But now this time he gets a little too tight here. Yes, it's way harder to extend the arm. So instead of fighting that too hard, I'm gonna take my outside hand, grab the wrist, okay? I'm also gonna switch my feet to open ankles and I'm gonna press towards the head to expose his base here. My bottom hand's gonna underhook. I'm pulling my ear as close to his knee as possible and I'm pressing my feet over his head to the floor, okay? Like a leg press. And then to the side. That should provide a strong sweeping motion, okay? Heels in, knees pinched. Let's just assume his wrist is already separated here, okay? We're gonna pull it away from his bicep, straight, and then we have a tight finish. Another thing we're gonna run into here, which is gonna further expose his lower body, is when he goes into a deep stack. And this is very good for armbar defense on his part. So for example, if Ramiro stacks me all the way up, he gets my hips over my head. Eventually what he's gonna look to do here is make little pulls with his elbow outwards so he can escape, okay? And then eventually, like, not the end of the world, like, of course I'd rather armbar him. We could switch to other things from here, right? But we did all this hard work to get to the armbar. We want to try to finish it. And we have options to do that even if we get stacked super hard. So, all right, we're here. He's defending tight. He's going to go back into that deep stack now, okay? All right. So we're still hooking the hand and the wrist with the top hand, okay? You saw Ramiro put his leg up for a second. He could reasonably be doing that. Some people do this on their knees. Some people will put their leg up. It's good if they put their leg up. It's gonna offer more space, okay? So from this deep stack, what I need to do is, if I already have the underhook here, I just need to release it so I have a little bit of space to bring my head underneath of them, okay? So instead of committing to a bicep curl underhook here, I'm just using this underhand to pull myself underneath of them, okay? Now I want to go underneath all the way to the other side to start breaking his balance here, okay? You guys can see once I do that, I'm right by his legs. So first thing I'm going to do, if he's keeping this leg wide, I'm going to grab his first leg. From here, he shouldn't be going anywhere. When I grab his first leg, I should be able to pull myself close enough so that I can now collect both legs if he's keeping them away from me. From here, I'm just going to keep this elbow tight, and I'm going to pull to the side so that he clears me. So again, we're dragging the arm across, pulling with our knees, catching the collar tie, walking our legs up with pinched knees. Okay? He defends. From here, we can start attacking the wrist however we see fit. Frame, bring the leg over it, and right away, let's say he goes into a deep stack. Okay, so now I'm using the head side hand to control the wrist. The leg side hand, instead of going for a deep underhook to flower sweep, okay, you guys can see he's got my hips under so much control here. I don't have power in my hips to dip his head this way this time, okay? So instead, I'm gonna release the underhook and use this to push my head underneath of him all the way to the other side, okay? I'm still keeping the armbar tight as I do this. I'm gonna collect the first leg that's towards me. If he has both legs together, great, I'll catch both right away. A lot of times this leg will be far away. So I'm pulling myself close, and I'm catching both legs here, okay? As soon as I catch both legs, I'm pinching my elbow. That way his base is super compromised. Now it should be super easy to turn your knees and pull with this elbow. That's gonna pull you all the way to the top. And then from here, again, we can look to separate and finish the top armbar. Really quick, since we are doing a few variations where we get to the top, let's just decipher some of the details here and like take a look at some of the things that are gonna happen to us. Let's separate just lower body and upper body so the details don't get too out of hand here. So if I have this top arm through and Ramiro wants to come to the top, go ahead. All the way. All right. Yeah, okay. This is what I need to do. Let's go back down. You see, if his head can come up, he's gonna be able to get all the way to a solid base here. So, similar to the way like we use our forearm and our elbow and our tricep to block the head, we're gonna use our hamstring now. So if I do feel him start to come up, what I can think to do is turn my feet towards his head, okay, and extend my legs. Go ahead, come up. See, when I extend this leg, it's very hard for him to come up. And a lot of times, as I'm making this motion, I can keep extending and driving him back to the ground, okay. Now, eventually, we are gonna wanna switch our arms if he has a good grip here, okay, if he's defending. So let's say we have this hand on this side this time. This changes the dynamic a little bit. So if I don't have the ability to free this hand immediately, okay, it's gonna be harder to do this variation. I got here, I wanna stay committed here. So we have an option on this side. If he starts coming up, we can turn this knee into his head. Can you come up? Yeah, see, it's hard. It's very similar to the detail, and we reasonably could do this with crossed ankles, okay? As when we use the crossed ankles to flare the knee out, I'm pushing into his head with my knee. So with open ankles, my heels are going this way, my knee's turning into his face. Go ahead, try to come up again. Yeah, that provides a lot of stability here. All right, now let's talk about our upper body. Again, we started with this arm because as you remember off both sweeps, this was the arm that was initially through. We did not land like this, we landed like this, okay? It's very common, it's normal. Sometimes you might be grabbing the pants, you might be hooking the leg for stability. Let's just assume we got here. once we get here, we never want to have an arm like off of this arm, so we're not doing this. Okay. In that moment, he can turn towards me and slip this elbow to the ground, okay? Especially if I'm not tight enough with my legs here. So you'll see some people actually like lock their hands and punch this through. In my opinion, you don't really need to do that, okay? You can just open a little space with the original forearm and then slip this one through. And now you'll have this hand free to start separating the grip. Now, there's a myriad of different ways to do this. Let's just go over some of the finer points, right? Just like last time when we were on the bottom for the first two arm bars, we were trying to separate this wrist and pull it towards us. Here, that's a bigger issue, okay? So, instead of sticking always to the outside here, okay, we do have the option this time of going under. Regardless of going under or going to the outside, what we need to affect here is the integrity of his wrist. We need to make that wrist weak so we can separate this grip. So from here, you see I have a hooked elbow with the arm I brought in. I'm gonna make a second hooked elbow towards his wrist, and I'm gonna do like a hammer curl towards my face. And I'm gonna stay nice and tight to this arm. Now to separate the grip, okay, the separation's at that point. I don't wanna pull him into his bicep, right? To separate the grip, I'm gonna take him towards that point, towards that space where the grip separates. So as we're here, I'm staying nice and tight, and you'll see his arm about to slip. If he goes to the weaker defense off of that, which is to lock his hands, it doesn't matter, just keep doing it. And as you're doing it, you can start pulling this towards your face, okay? Talk about the finishes in just a second. Another option here, okay? If he's very strong, you feel like this isn't tight enough, okay? Some people prefer, baseball bat type motions, okay? Hands on the collar, okay? Darces, corkscrew, footlock, stuff like that. Point being, this can be a strong motion as well, okay? So, first we were here. If it's really strong or I'm looking for a different option, I can open my top elbow slightly to make room for my other elbow to come around. I'm gonna make my elbows touch, and I'm gonna make a gable grip here. And now I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna keep this nice and tight, start leaning towards the head, using this to separate, and this will be a really tight grip. If he does not straighten his arm, there is a very strong possibility here that we could finish an Americana, okay? Now let's talk about when his arm goes straight. Okay. Typically, if everything goes right, we just go to the wrist, we finish here, okay? One of Ramiro's last defenses when we do that is when I separate, he could reasonably turn his thumb down, and he can do what's called a hitchhiker escape. He's gonna run away from me, and he's gonna start coming up to his knees, and he'll escape, okay? Not an uncommon escape. Risky, but it is the last ditch once you get your arm separated. Now, how do I stop him from doing that as I separate this? Well, as I separate this, I need the ability to control his elbow. So as we're going towards the finish here, if I feel like he's about to turn this thumb down, I'm gonna pull his elbow away from that direction. Can you hitchhiker now? And then from here, I'll catch his wrist with the other hand, bring it straight, and then we can go back to our finish here, okay? Building off of that, okay, towards the end, let's say it's somebody really flexible, somebody really strong, somebody that doesn't want to tap, okay? You can definitely finish the arm and, quote unquote, pop it like that. Let's take a look at a few other ways we can manipulate the elbow here. So from that same grip break, I separate, I get the arm straight, I'm controlling the elbow so he doesn't hitchhiker. If I feel this thumb start to turn down, I start pulling this straight, okay? All right, for whatever reason, he's not tapping here. So something else we can do is we can take the original hand on the wrist, start pulling this across towards the leg side pocket. As we do that, we can take the top hand, come in with a high elbow, and bring the arm over the hip, which provides serious amount of space to hyperextend the elbow versus here, which is not as tight, right? It's also a bone there, it's very solid. It's gonna provide a lot of power. If we're thinking in terms of the other side, that's when we can also think of finishing arm bars with our lat, right? So if his arm goes this way, controlling the elbow, we can start to pummel over, grab his tricep, close our elbow, and then hip into it the same way. Okay? So, really quick, run through all those things. Try to come up. Okay? Try to come up. Okay? Breaking the grip. 1. That's fine. Go ahead. Just for fun. Okay. This is good too, guys, because this might help you see the elbows a little bit better too. Can't break it, you know, it's just got the best gable grip in the world. Okay, here. Not here. Okay, this is different. Make sure it's here. Okay. Again, you see the way his thumb's going when I break, that's conducive for the hitchhiker. So right away, control that elbow. Pull it away from the hitchhiker. Here's our traditional finish. Okay, thumb up. Palm up works too in certain situations. Otherwise, if he's not tapping, leg side, hold down, tight elbow, high elbow, just like a guillotine. Finish 1. If he goes this way, again, we'll control that elbow so it doesn't rotate. Pinch with our forearm into the lat, and then from here, once you hip in, that should be a strong finish as well.